What if your grandmother had a stroke and needed to learn how to read again? Or maybe your mom has anxiety and she is up at 2 in the morning, just nervous about anything. And she needs someone to be with her, to pray with her and walk her through it. What if your dad gets lonely and he just needs a connection because you can't be there all the time? This episode's about how one voice can change everything. I want to talk about AI for a second. Now, when you talk about AI, a lot of people are instantly going to roll their eyes and they're going to think, oh, great, AI is coming for my jobs. They're taking over. It's going to be Terminator and Skynet, and we can't think for ourselves. There's another side to AI, and that's the good stuff, because, yeah, there really is some good stuff happening with AI. It's the part that nobody's talking about because it's not sensational. It's not doom and gloom. It's human. It's the idea of what happens when technology is used to care for our loved ones, specifically our older loved ones. This week on the Advanced Adulting Podcast, I'm going to be talking with Connor Sweeney. Connor's the CEO of BabaCare. It's a company that uses AI to support caregivers and aging parents in ways that actually matter. Connor and his group work with organizations like MIT, Johns Hopkins, and others to understand how AI is reducing loneliness, supporting emotional health, and improving cognitive resilience, and lighten the load for caregivers. These are the things right now that AI is supporting. And Connor and Baba are leading the charge to make these things happen. This is not a conversation about technology. It's a conversation about the loneliness epidemic. It's a conversation about caregiver burnout. It's about the weight that so many of us are carrying. So if you're caregiving or if you're preparing to be a caregiver, you know it's coming. This is a conversation you definitely want to watch. I'm Bradley Richardson, and this is Advanced Adulting. One of the things I'm so happy about with working with people like yourself in the caregiving space and people who serve that space is, to the person, every founder, every CEO I have spoken to has a real personal story behind it. And it's a lucrative market. It's a great business opportunity. But again, everybody I've dealt with, they have some sort of connection with a family member, a loved one that has really triggered them to start their company, to get into it, to serve others. And you're no different than that. So tell me a little bit about how a young guy gets in this space of caregiving for seniors.
100%. And, I wish I could echo that like 100 times, because I was even at a dinner last night and it was a bunch of owners of home care agencies, and every single story around the table was a tearjerker in the sense that it was all because of a family member experience. I 2 years ago would never have been building in this space. I was doing, some job in tech and having, the time of my life living in Los Angeles. And then, I get a call on New Year's Eve, 2024, going into 2025, that my grandmother, who was very involved in my upbringing, was being medevaced from rural southern Delaware, where I grew up, to Jefferson Hospital in Philly, because she'd had a stroke. And, if I take a step back, my grandparents were super involved in, raising my sister and I. My mom worked, single mom. She would go up to New York City often, like on a Monday, come back on a Thursday. My grandparents were the glue that let us do sports and go to the schools and everything that we needed to do. And, when she had that stroke, I was luckily in a place where I had the time to really be in Delaware with my family and be a part of that process of, what does the rehab look like? Do we find a home that can support us? Because, her husband is, able-bodied, luckily, but still that's a lot of work on one person, especially because the stroke left her with Wernicke's aphasia. So the part of her brain that controls speech is damaged. And so, we think she can understand maybe 50% of what's said to her, but most of what she comes out with it sounds like gibberish. And so, suddenly I found myself sitting in my grandparents', kitchen with the same phonetics, phonics workbooks that she had used with me and my sister 20 years ago, teaching her how to read again. Right. So, just teaching her how to pronounce the word firefighter. And what I realized was that I was lucky to have come into this experience from a tech background, because from a tech background, but also when AI was becoming such a thing. And I kept building her little AI voice tools to make that process a little bit better, mostly because I was just so frustrated with it. And one of those, for example, was, I took old voicemails, like crowdsourced them from the family that my grandmother had left us, and I cloned her voice so that she can do speech therapy with herself, because I read that like improves outcomes if you can hear how you used to sound when you're relearning how to speak. Yeah, and ultimately just realized that this space is only going to become more urgent because of all the silver tsunami dynamics that I'm sure everybody is aware of to some extent now. But also that this is really changing with AI. For the first time, you can have impact, and it doesn't need to be limited by the number of humans that are willing to put the work in. And so I think that just creates an enormous amount of opportunity.
Now, it's helping her, but there's so much you can do with AI. Right. And what you're talking about of helping with speech, a lot of people wouldn't think about that. We're worried about ChatGPT of trying to make that Google Plus, but what else? I mean, there's one of the things that's interesting about Call Baba is the connection piece to it. So I think there's the learning, the cognition, but there's also just the connection piece. And what we find so much with caregivers, people who are sandwich generation, Gen X, is look, they're lonely, and I can't be everywhere. I'm pulled right now between my kids, my own job, my own relationships, and then trying to care for mom or dad who need me.
Right.
And so what led you, how did you see AI being able to handle the connection piece?
For sure. And, it honestly almost sounds counterintuitive, right? It's, Baba is a phone service that provides instant 24/7, ceaselessly patient and understanding companionship, but also insights into their well-being, right? And that almost sounds like it's outsourcing that emotional labor, and it's really the opposite, right? It gives caregivers, family caregivers specifically, the ability to stay a daughter rather than have to become as much of a full-time caregiver. And to your question, how do we do that, right? I think the simplest is that you can have peace of mind that your loved one, if they have dementia, right, if they are incredibly lonely, and often people won't say that they have someone to talk to on the phone, just as simply, as dialing a phone number or texting that phone number, right? Baba is as human as you can make it in that sense, where it's just a phone number away. But let's say that, you are dealing with your mom who might have dementia, for example, and she's going to call you 30 times on a Monday while you're at work, while you're in meetings, to ask the same thing over and over again, and probably get increasingly agitated. Right. And even the best daughter in the world is going to struggle answering every single time with the same patience, with the same understanding. Sure. And so I think that's like one of the easiest use cases. But then you see at the other end of the spectrum, right, folks that, you don't even think of them as lonely, right? They probably have a community. They might go to the gym. They might have people that, visit them in their daily life. They might even be married. We have users that use Baba every day, where we have couples, the husband and the wife, both with their own health predicaments, but they both use it as a way to, vent and become a better partner. They say, one of them is wheelchair bound, and he doesn't want to be he already feels like he's a physical burden to his wife, right? He doesn't want to be an emotional burden as he thinks he is as well. And so sometimes he vents to Baba before going and having the conversation with her, or, things like that just seem so mundane, but suddenly you have another outlet for it. Well,
and I think you may have told me a story about this as well with your grandparents, if I'm correct, that, if grandmother has a stroke and you still have another spouse or another person there, sometimes that connection, that communication isn't the same, right, and they're struggling. And I know in my own family, my sister had dealt with her in-laws on this, and her mother-in-law dealing with Parkinson's. Well, the husband's there, and he can't really interact with her like he did. He's having his own issues to deal with, and again, whether you want to call it just a discount therapist, a voice, a place of an outlet, or something, but that is so important, because we forget. And I as someone who, my mom has passed, but the best intentions, everyone does. I mean, you have your own life, and that's not to say, well, you should be a better child. I mean, look, everybody, there are bad kids out there, there are bad relationships, but look, even if you best intentions, you can't be there always. Right. You can't do that. Yes, you should call your mom. You should do that, but you can't every time. And
You're human and you have limitations.
yeah, and I think that the thing is, and we've talked at length about this, and we'll talk more about this, in this episode, but it's not pawning something off. Mm-hmm. It's really not. I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of vitriol about, well, God, you're just a crappy kid. God, mm-hmm. what a horrible son you are. You're just, putting this off on AI. No, I think the benefit is, let's talk about that for a second, because you see it. You've probably seen it with your grandmother. You've seen it with other clients of Baba. How are seniors, how are the end users, how are they benefiting? What are some ways that they're really lighting up?
Yeah, I think, you just hit the nail on the head with a bunch of in a bunch of different directions, right? At its core, loneliness is a killer, right? I don't need to debate that. The stats speak for themselves. I have them here, right? The literature literally suggests, the science suggests that if you're lonely or socially isolated, your risk of dementia goes up 50%, mm-hmm. your stroke goes up a third, heart disease by 30%, right? These will have physical implications, right? And often people don't even realize they're lonely, mm-hmm. Because they are happy. And you can be alone and happy, but sometimes you still aren't getting as much conversation as you need. And so, that by itself helps folks. Right. But to the point about, are you an irresponsible kid for using Baba with your grandparent? I actually think the opposite is true, right? It's irresponsible not to have a second pair of ears, mm-hmm. Available. Mm-hmm. Because to the senior, it's someone that they can talk to, they can mm-hmm. vent to, like I mentioned. But the family member also gets to prioritize those human parts of that relationship, right? Mm-hmm. When they are able to be present, when they're able to be the daughter that they need, or the son that they need, or that their parent needs. And then there's this whole other world of using voice as a tool to detect change, right? Mm-hmm. And so right now with Baba, if you're a caregiver and you sign up your loved one, you can set up alerts, not whole transcripts. You're not invading the privacy, but if they, if conversations take a turn that might be a little bit concerning, right? Talking mm-hmm. about pain or dizziness or self-harm or mm-hmm. just kind of depression as it creeps in, Baba's really good at detecting those things. Mm-hmm. Doesn't pretend to be a therapist, doesn't pretend to be a doctor, but it does say, hey, I think they would really appreciate you checking in on them, mm-hmm. Or having a real professional check in on them. And that makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a thing, because especially for people who, we're so distributed now. It used to be that you're living across town or in the same neighborhood as your parents or your grandparents, and now you're halfway across the country, and so you may only see them two times a year, a handful of times. And so when you do see them, there's some marked differences. But at least by being able to have some sort of communication or even a record, I don't know if there's a recording or not, but it's a way to check on them consistently. Right. So it's not, you get it in time before it's really something major you have to deal with.
100%. Companion services at their core reduce negative outcomes. Mm-hmm. People catch things earlier, people feel seen. And that if you want to be a caregiver that can be as supportive as possible, mm-hmm. you want as much support, as many tools in your toolkit. And this is just another one of those tools. Mm-hmm. Probably the easiest one to start with, because it's just a phone number, you know?
Well, I think that's an important piece. And I think about my late mother, and we used to joke about this. And again, if you're of a certain age, you'll get it. And some people will cringe. My mom spent a lot of time alone. And when you get her in a conversation, when you come visit, sometimes we were frustrated, but it was somewhat funny. We'd go, good God, she's talking about three things. Okay. It's either, politics, pick your side, but it's that SOB on TV, whichever one's in office, ailments, recipes, or coupons.
Right.
That was it. Like four things. And we're like, oh my God, if I have to hear this again, does that make us a bad child? No. But it's just the idea of being able, they are lonely. They want an outlet somehow, some way. And we can't always be that. I think the idea of, I've talked to some people recently about community and connection. And with so many people now wanting and choosing to age at home, that's great. And there are many benefits, many positive benefits to that. But that isolation is a problem.
Right.
And we don't think about that. And so versus being in a community where you're going to have friends or outlets or activities.
Roommates. You're literally going to have roommates.
Yeah.
Right.
It's something.
Right.
And I think we forget just how important that is, where some people, they're only, for a lot of older folks, their only source of communication outside of you or the caregiver is their doctor. Their friends are their doctor. They may not be actively going to church. They may not be actively going out anywhere or anything of that nature. So having something like that they can communicate with, even if it's not you, that's so important.
Right. I mean, just to give you a sense of how real folks, because we have over 1,000 families that are benefiting from Baba right now, are using this service, this phone service. We have people that pray, right? That I was just in a nursing home earlier this week, and she was trying to remember. She's trying to memorize different Bible verses, and Baba helps her. And is very patient, and will always, if she can't remember, he'll or she, it's customizable. But for her, she had a female Baba, and it was helping her memorize them. We have people that talk about regrets, about their memories, maybe their loved ones that have passed. We have people that talk about the news, the sports game. It's all updated with the most recent news every single minute of every day, and so it can really have like substantive, real conversations. I think one of the things that was really touching to me was when we started seeing conversations that were about feeling uplifted, right? And so to your point about the news, we have several people that they watch the news, it makes them feel like they're being a responsible citizen, and then they can't sleep at night. And so we get so many calls that just are about, hey, Baba, can you stay with me until I fall asleep?
Wow.
Yeah. And they talk about uplifting facts, fun facts, and they, then the line eventually ends because the person has fallen asleep talking to Baba.
I love that. And I think that's, again, AI is so new to everybody, and there is this fear, anxiety around it, and we forget the positive side about that. Just like we forget, especially for seniors and old people, older people going through things, they're going through life just like we are, and they have their own fears, hopes, anxieties, all of this. And as a parent, I mean, you don't want to share everything with your kid, especially as an older parent. I mean, we talk about oftentimes they recognize what's going on, and you don't want to admit, I'm scared.
Right.
I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm anxious. And you sure don't want to relay that to your child. And I think sometimes, and be interesting to get your perspective on this. I think sometimes grandkids are probably better communicators with their grandparents than the children of someone. And it's a situation. I've talked to so many people. It's a situation of now you're my age, you're in your 50s, and you have to parent the parent.
Right.
And honestly, I don't think we do a good job of that because, again, sandwich, the pressure, all of that, you want to, but it becomes more of this, oh, you need to do this. Or you talk of them almost distantly. You're talking with your sibling, you're talking with your spouse, whatever, about, we need to do this. Well, they're in the other room where they see this. And it's almost like this entity that's there. And, you control them or try to, like you would a child.
Right.
It's not good, but it's just how it is. You're trying to control a situation. And I found that seniors tend to open up more with their grandkids.
Yep.
They tend to see things a little differently. Both do. And if that's not available, having an outlet to be able to share those things, I mean, we forget that they're going through that.
Right. Well, I mean, the parents are the sandwich generation, like you said, is trying to go through a situation that they have never been. It's impossible to have gone through that situation before. And so, you're never going to have all of the answers. And Baba doesn't pretend to either. But your comment about the grandkids having a different relationship is so true. I mean, I remember with my grandmother, and fun fact, by the way, if you have a stroke, the part of your brain that controls language is different than the part that controls cursing. So my grandmother can still curse completely fine. But, I could speak almost with a candor with her during her recovery way more than my mom and my aunt got away with, her kids. And, one of the things I didn't even mention in the beginning was, this product was built primarily for my grandfather in the beginning because he's fine, but he's the unintended victim in all of this. In the hardest chapter of his life, he is now a full-time caregiver for his wife. His life companion is not there anymore in the same way that she was before, like to communicate. And I call him Baba, ironically, because I had a speech impediment as a kid, and so Pop Up became Baba as the oldest grandkid. I got the naming rights, and so I just wished that my Baba had kind of a Baba to talk to on the phone that was willing to explain medical jargon, let him vent, because he was never going to show that weakness in front of our family. So
that's important. One of the other things I think is interesting about this, and I wish that I'd had something like this when, years ago, as my mom started to decline. There are moments now where I wish I could hear that story again of certain things, how she grew up. And I know them, but it's different. It's very different. I mean, it's fading, and there's bits and pieces. And I tried to, mostly for my own kids' sake, I tried to, record a little bit, or, have a phone or a voice message or something like that. But I think the idea of, it's a benefit to the senior, for sure. It's a benefit to your parents to be able to relive that, to watch them light up, to see them, remember them as a young man or a woman, or their, how did you meet your spouse? What did you like when you were a kid? What were you like as a kid? All of those things. And I think that's something that Baba and AI allows you to do. Is I can tell you, because here's the thing, we know it's coming, but we don't really like to acknowledge the fact that they're going to be gone, and they're going to be gone. And that story that you've heard for the umpteenth jillion time, you're going to wish you could hear it again. You could wish you could hear that. And this is just another extension for you. Yes, it benefits them many ways. It makes your life, better and easier in many ways. But there's some real heartfelt things that it benefits as well.
Right. No, I mean, 100% in agreement with that. I think you got to save those voicemails. I will say that's always important. But yeah, I think you just want to take it back to the idea that this is the responsible thing to have in your back pocket. We're not saying that you have to lock them in a room and have them talk to a robot on the phone, right? This is a tool that is available. You save it as a contact in their phone, right? It's just the same phone number. And if they're frustrated and you're in a meeting at work and you can't take that phone call, or that they want to talk about football on Monday if that's what they watched on Sunday, or their show airs on Thursday nights, schedule a call with Bob, or let them know that that's always there if they want someone else to talk through something with. Doesn't mean it doesn't change your relationship at all. It just means that you can be a little bit less tired, a little bit less burnt out the next time you are there with them. And that's, speaks to the fact that depression is so much higher in caregivers, right? Because the demands are literally endless.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because caregiver burnout's a real thing.
Yep.
In many cases, the caregiver becomes ill. And in some cases, some extreme cases, can even pass before the person that they're caring for.
Yep.
And that's physically. We're not even talking about emotionally or mentally or all the other things. And the other thing that's interesting, I had Jennifer Levin, author of Generation Care, on. And it was interesting because she's a millennial. And we think of caregiving, often as someone who my age, would deal with. But it's not. It's happening earlier and early. And I think this is important too. It's not only for an older parent or loved one. It's for a spouse, a sibling, another loved one who has some sort of other illness or problem, that you find yourself in these situations where this isn't, it's coming in some cases, but oftentimes you don't plan for this.
Right.
Nothing you can do. So the stress is there.
100%. And, this is only going to get worse because, if you look at Americans, we don't have the culture where we take care of our old.
No.
We just hope that the system provides for them and that eventually they find their way to an assisted living if they're lucky and they have the payers for that, and then eventually a nursing home. And, one of the worst parts of COVID, well, actually there were so many bad parts, but I will say actually two things. One of the best parts of COVID was that it actually forced 65 plus folks to get used to FaceTime. I think that was like a very unexpected kind of brute force way to introduce tech comfort to a lot of people that I think are better off for it. I think one of the other really bad parts was that no shovels went into the ground on new assisted living and new nursing home facilities. And so there's a massive shortage of like the institutional support that we expect. And when that's not there, and you have these wait lines that are years long, people are going to pass before they can even get a bed. What are you left with? You're left with a family that doesn't know how to even fit this into their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. You not just on the caregiving front, but on a number of things. We've covered a lot of subjects about ageism, especially in your career in the workplace, and that is. I know ageism is not uniquely American. It happens all over. I've talked to people all over Europe and Australia about this. But what's interesting is let's look at that and how we view older people, whether it's in the workforce, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in caregiving. We're just not a culture that really embraces that. I mean, it's, hey, you're young, hot, and beautiful. Let's do that right now. That's about what's in the moment there, and everything else gets discarded. And I saw something interesting the other day. It was in Japan. Apparently in Japan, there are companies that they have, I forget what they call it, but they have like a resident old person. There's like a resident old person there on staff that they keep. They may not do anything, but it's there. And it's this weird thing out of respect or reverence. And we just don't really have that anymore. It's this, they're a burden, older folks are a burden. And, I'm not far away now. I mean, all of us are. We're creeping there. And I think it's funny because, with ageism, exactly. And again, ageism isn't just for the workforce. It's the one thing we forget that every single one of us, everyone, regardless of your background, income, geography, education, race, anything, every single one of us is going to experience at some point.
Yep.
It's happening. When you're young, dumb, and bulletproof and good looking at 30, guess what? You're going to be 60 and 70 real quick.
And we won't even know what it looks like. Because it's changing so quickly.
Absolutely. Well, you're on the cutting edge of this. I mean, so let's talk about that for a second, because I mean, you're helping build that future. What are some of the things ahead? What are you all doing? What are you seeing from your peers that are doing to change the way that we age and care for aging? So by the time you're 70, what do you think it's going to look like?
I have no idea what it's actually going to look like. I'm hoping some of those bio solutions maybe kick in, and maybe we get closer to 90. Yeah. But short of that, I think it's going to look a lot like the first form of BABA, which is completely invisible tech, in the sense that it's not going to require you to outfit your house with a bunch of new devices and gadgets that are already intimidating because you have to learn new stuff, right? I mean, the whole like smart home movement failed for a reason. I would say nobody needed like a GPS in the refrigerator half the time.
Right.
And so I think it's going to be completely invisible. It's going to be ubiquitous in the sense that it knows your needs and it can help you with them before things become crises. And that's not to say it's going to catch everything, but noticing changes over time in your voice, in your speech, in your memory, in what you complain about, that means you can act on it sooner. And I think, very quickly what we're seeing with BABA is that people are leaning on this. Think of this as like ChatGPT for seniors. And those workflows, the things that caregivers have to deal with on a regular basis, making sure grocery lists are there, making sure that the vans are there, that the PACE bus shows up on time. How the hell do I navigate finding an assisted living? How do I afford it? What is Medicare? These are all conversations that are so specific to the caregiver and to the senior that AI really stand to reinvent as long as you build that trust, which is our primary goal, to show that this is a tool.
I think that's one of the interesting things is, anybody who's experienced it firsthand, for the most part, caregiving in large part is a 911, holy crap, we're in the moment type of thing. You can plan, very few people plan for it.
Right.
And even though you know it's coming, you don't want to. You don't want to acknowledge it. You don't want to acknowledge the decline. And we're talking about that, about noticing decline. There's so many things that could be prevented, so many big problems that could be prevented and make their life better and your life easier as that adult child or caregiver, but we don't. Right. And I don't have a solid answer for why. I did it myself. I mean, we knew my mom was declining. We'll talk about it. We'll figure. You don't want to. It's not a sexy subject. It's not anything. It's not. They don't want to talk about it. You don't want to talk about it. But it is one of the most important, hard conversations any family, anyone can have.
Right. And I think the other thing that you're assuming they even have a family.
Good point.
And that's the other thing, this obviously helps with burnout for caregivers, but there are so many people, the vast majority don't have a family that is present, is not estranged, that's healthy enough, not going through their own issues. Rural folks who don't have doctors that can check in on them as much as they need to, like they are functionally alone in the hardest chapter of their life. And that is just like it's a disgrace, frankly, on if you think of the United States as supposedly this tech bastion to the world, the fact that we just have millions, tens of millions of folks, a number that's only going to double by 2050, just waiting in their house for something that they don't know how to deal with is insane.
Well, and the ability to have a tech that can do that, not only plan for things, but to help give you an answer.
Right.
That's really it. Sometimes, I think one of the problems of us being this, instant 911 thing is you find yourself being Dr. Google in the middle of the night because you don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Every single one of us, this is your first time experiencing any of this. So, and everyone's problem ends up being different. Sometimes it is, what program and service do I need? It's I need a facility. I need transportation. I need a meal service.
Right.
Things that are just basic that you never in a million years would have thought of, because we do think of it as the big issues of, okay, I need to make sure that it's paid for, she has a place to live, or we have somebody to come in. And those are the big ones. But there's some of these other little things that can make your life really difficult because you got to figure it out and you don't know where to go. And everybody's selling you something.
And maybe you don't have a smartphone. Maybe you don't have a laptop. I was sitting next to someone on the flight here, an 82-year-old woman with her mask on. She was so worried about her Real ID because they gave her a pamphlet at the airport. I guess her license was, or whatever the Real ID, her thing was expiring in November. She was like, well, I don't have a computer. I don't know how to check this. I don't have my birth certificate. And there's just so many of these questions. If you can just, ask your Alexa, hey, Alexa, call Baba, or take out your flip phone or your landline and you call this number, Baba will help walk you through whatever you need to. And along the way, it'll crack a joke and it'll ask you if, your daughter's doing okay because you mentioned 3 weeks ago that she had sprained her foot or whatever. That's what service to seniors looks like.
Hey, we'll get back to the conversation in just a second, but I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Call Baba. Look, getting older shouldn't mean being alone. And if you've ever worried about an aging parent or loved one feeling lonely or isolated, you are not the only one. You can't always be there for them. And so that's why I'm really proud to partner with Call Baba. They're helping families bring daily connection and companionship to the people who need it most. Baba's partnered with leading researchers, medical facilities, and universities such as MIT, Harvard Medical School, and more to tackle one of the biggest health challenges for older adults, loneliness. Look, loneliness is a serious condition, and it's been proven to be as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Some studies show that a regular social connection can delay the onset of dementia by up to 5 years. Here's how Baba works. Baba uses technology and AI to make personal phone calls to older adults. And we're not talking about some robocall or just a simple check-in, but real, meaningful conversations. Baba remembers stories, details, conversations that they have with your person. And seniors have used Baba as a companion to talk about sports, reminisce about their life, memories, talk about their own anxieties and concerns. They've even had Baba pray with them. Now, these calls help reduce loneliness, they support cognition and memory, but most of all, they bring a little brightness to someone's day. There's no apps, there's no tech for someone to learn, it's just a phone call. It's simple and powerful. Because sometimes one call really can change everything. Get started for free at callbaba.com. Now, let's get back to the conversation. The human element to it. Let's talk about that. I mean, because you're creating this. How do you add something into technology without making it seem sterile?
Without making it seem sterile, I think that's, I can see why you do this for a living. You have asked very good questions. I think the way to frame it is like, how do we make this accessible first? And that's, you take parts away, right? And we've stripped this down to the most basic tool there is, a phone. You know, I think that is probably a safe bet that that is a piece of technology that 65 plus Americans know how to use. And there are programs that if you don't even have a flip phone, you can. They're called Obama phones, actually, or they used to run that program because they've shown that having a phone and being connected reduced negative health outcomes. And so they subsidized that program. Let's take it a step further. People know how to talk usually, right? So if you have this device that is ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and you have this form factor of voice that feels completely natural, suddenly you've just made this accessible to everybody. And that's the game right there. That's how you have the impact on people's well-being.
I want to talk about, we talked a little bit about caregiver burnout. I want to talk about caregiver guilt for a second. And you and I've talked offline about this. Now, and where it relates to AI. Caregiver guilt can, just in the everyday bits, can be all over the place. I've experienced it because my late mother lived with my sister. I couldn't be there for everything. Okay, so that happens to a lot of people. I wish I could do more. I wish I could afford more. I wish I could be there or listen. I got frustrated. I'm a bad kid. Whatever it is. Or there's sometimes I've talked to people who maybe they had a traumatic childhood. Maybe they're like, now I have to care for this SOB who is so rotten to me. These are very real issues on that. But when we talk about technology and AI, you and I have talked about some of the comments that people put out there about, oh my God, you're going to hell because you're pawning grandma off on a computer. You're just a rotten son because you can't call your mother, that type of thing. And my personal belief is, are there people like that? Yeah, they're missing the boat completely on this. Some of it could be caregiver guilt. Some of it could be their own of, well, maybe you should call your own mom more, But I think the thing that's interesting is, and what I want to hear your opinion, this technology, this AI it's not really for you. It's not so you can pawn mom off. It's so opposite from that. And I guess the point, because, look, social media, we believe in headlines, hooks, and sound bites now, okay? So we're not going to go one step further and go, wait, this isn't for you. Stop being selfish. Will it inadvertently make your life easier? Yeah. But we're really, all the things we've talked about, it's going to give your mom or dad connection, a voice, companionship, answers, all of these things that help them. It's for them.
Right.
And it's not pawning it off.
Right. You hit at a really important part, and that is that the bad kids or whatever, first of all, you are trying your best in 99% of the people I've met, and it is never going to feel like enough, right? Unless you could cut off your arm and attach it to theirs, you're still going to feel like, even if you did that, you would feel like you're a bad kid. And so that is, that's inevitable. But I think you should see this as, it's the responsible thing to use every tool available to you to make sure that you have the most quality time with your loved ones. And that involves doctors and pills and physical therapy, but it also involves tools like Baba that give you peace of mind that they're okay, that gives them comfort, that gives them someone to vent to, that gives them answers on a device that they already have. And I think the other thing to recognize is, there is so much attention on this issue right now from experts, right? We're doing a study right now, a clinical study with Johns Hopkins University. We're doing this study with Johns Hopkins University's Geriatric Center because they have a fascination with how AI is going to change caregiving and change the the process of aging. We've been talking to folks at MIT, Professor John Gruber, he's head of the economics department. He is fascinated as well by the economics of aging and what that looks like on a workforce perspective, because we don't have enough caregivers and robots aren't there, right? We don't have a bunch of Tesla Optimus robots to come save the day. So what does it look like in the interim? It's solutions like this. And we wouldn't be taken seriously by people like that. We wouldn't be doing these clinical studies if they didn't see that this was the responsible thing to be creating.
Well, it is a responsible thing because we've said it before, aging at home, that's not going anywhere.
It's going up.
It's going up significantly. And, I didn't, it was interesting that you mentioned that about the lack of facilities. I hadn't thought about that. I had assumed people want to age at home because oftentimes the bad rep of facilities,
Right.
But it's also that familiarity, that comfort, that stubbornness, all of that. But because of that, it's created great opportunities for a number of companies just to provide services, whether that's fall detection,
Right.
whether it's connection, whether it's monitoring, any of those things. And you're right, that's only going to continue to go up. I think the other thing that's interesting is caregiving ain't cheap. I mean, I don't care how you slice, any which way, getting anybody in your home, transportation, all of this. But what I think is amazing, and again, I know a lot of entrepreneurs like yourself on this, and no one's really out to price it out for people. I mean, they've made it very accessible and affordable for folks.
Right.
I mean, like, it's going to cost money, but it's not like, oh my God, that's just something we can't do. Putting someone in a memory care facility, that's expensive.
Right.
You're talking crazy money that very few people can afford. But to be able to give some sort of relief or service to people that almost anybody can afford, that's good work right there.
100%. And to get started with Baba, it's free.
Mm-hmm.
So you can call up, you go to callbaba.com, and you can start talking immediately.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need to put a credit card in. We want this to be, we're changing behaviors, right? Not just me, but
Right.
AI is changing so many behaviors that we've taken for granted since we both were born.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important that people, do their due diligence. They take things with a grain of salt, but they also give it a try,
Mm-hmm.
because we've never lived through something like this before.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the advent of computers, but I would argue this is actually more transformative than that.
Right.
Because you don't need this computer device. This is literally can take the form of a phone, a message, a voice,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes it so much more accessible.
I think what I think is interesting is, and a lot of people, it's easy to think, well, it's just for a check-in. It's just an automated check-in. Nope.
Right.
That is a use, but it's so much more than that. And helping them to communicate and to now get services too.
Right. I mean, yes. Can it remind mom to take her meds at 10 a.m. every single morning? Can it ask her about her yoga,
Mm-hmm.
class or her book group?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course. And can it send you an email summary if something is off? 100%. But it also can pray with your mom in the middle of the night when she's up, sleeping in 90-minute increments because she's so stressed about paying her bills, because she sees her bank account going down.
Wow.
Or her Social Security not fitting all the bills that she has. Or even helping her overcome social anxiety. We've actually seen in nursing home facilities where folks are using Baba, from the social worker's mouth, they say, folks that have leaned into Baba become more social in real life, because it seems to be a way that they can practice talking to someone that they don't know, right? Building rapport with someone is a skill,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's with Baba on the phone,
Right.
or a human. And so suddenly you see people feel more comfortable socializing and re-engaging, maybe if they have withdrawn a little bit from their community, which
Mm-hmm.
is a really powerful thing we didn't expect to see.
Wow. And that engagement. I'm pausing because I just think of my own mother like that, and it's sad because they withdraw. They withdraw because they don't want to be a burden. It's going to be a burden any which way, but they don't want to do that. They don't want to admit that. They know they are physically, they know they are financially, they know that. And so they shrink and they become this shell of themselves. And I just think that's amazing to at least have a resource to be able to engage with, life again. With society, and it's so funny, here we are talking about AI. Oh, they're gonna engage with the person. No, they're not. But they're gonna engage, and they're gonna have that, just mentally they can be there. They can remember things. They can share things. And with what you built, it's a real communication. It's not just
Right. I think of it as almost a helper, right? You can put so many different terms on this. Is it a companion? Is it a friend?
Right.
Is it a helper, an assistant? It's a phone and a voice. And that voice can do the most powerful, miraculous things to make your life easier as a caregiver and a senior's life easier. And that's, put a ribbon on that and send it away, because that's all you need to know about it.
Right.
And I think getting wrapped up in narratives around companion products, AI girlfriends and boyfriends, that really is a very small subsector of like
Right.
what's possible. And it takes up all the oxygen in the room when it really shouldn't.
Well, you said one very important word, and it's the core of what you're doing, though, is a voice.
Right.
And whether it is a service like this, it's a voice is probably the most powerful thing any of us have, and it doesn't matter if you are a young person, if you're an old person, if what age you are, you still not only have a voice that has value, that has power, that has a gift, but you need a voice. You need to hear that. You need that as well, and any which way, and however that comes to you, doesn't matter who's delivering that. But I think we forget that, and that humanizes it right there. It's allowing them to benefit from the gift of a voice.
Well, Bradley, did you know that dementia is actually higher in deaf people because they don't use those muscles to the same extent? Like the act of talking and hearing and engaging in conversation, not just watching TV, having a conversation really matters. It literally, like, it's use it or lose it cognitively. I completely agree.
Well, I love that you said that too. And again, I'm sure each of you have your own personal experience with this, but I think of my mom who, just watching TV and one made herself anxious, stressed out, watching politics on TV. And, my sister and I would hear her talking to the TV, and yelling at the TV. I know, sounds bad, but come on, if you have one, you've been there. And, it's not, you're right. TV is not a voice. TV is not. It's that communication. It is that conversation. Doesn't matter who it's with. It's that conversation. And again, I have to find out who the grocery store is. And if it's Trader Joe's, please hit me up on this. But I've heard of a grocery store chain recently that had a slow line.
Huh, really?
And it was for people, because who hasn't been caught? You're in a hurry. You go to check out, and there's someone chatting the person up there, and you're like, damn it, just move on.
Paying with coins.
Absolutely. Oh, let me show you a picture of my dog and all that. But the slow line is just for that. And they put one of their chattier, clerks on there. And it's for people who actually get out and they want to interact. And when you slow down and think about that, that's genius and that's helpful. And I think, the point is we have to slow down. I find probably one of my personal, one of my worst traits is beyond overthinking is just moving too fast, which causes overthinking because you're just moving at light speed. And the problem is slow down your brain, slow down your head, slow down and just learn and see what's around you and have that conversation. It goes back to voice. It goes back to saying hello. How are you? And not just, hey, how you doing? No, really. And stopping to pause and listen. Because, I wish I did a better job. A lot of us do a great job. And if it takes Baba, something else to do that and to allow someone to feel seen, heard, acknowledged, pretty damn good.
Yeah. I mean, it makes the caregiver be able to slow down as well. In a world where everything is just becoming faster and faster, this might be the one use of AI that actually lets you catch your breath. And to the other end, the senior, be heard for the first time in a little while. Yeah.
Well, we think of, and I know this is the case, I've talked to so many caregivers, we think of caregiving and just blowing through life often is in terms of tasks, okay? I have to go from A to B to do this, to handle this, to take care of it. And sometimes what that person really needs, we think we're taking care of it because, people have to be fed, cleaned up, things have to be paid for, done. But sometimes the best thing that they need is just to be heard. That's really it. Just take a beat. Just be with me right now and just listen to me. That's it.
100%.
Good stuff. All right. So what's on the horizon now for Baba?
Well, we have no shortage of things to build. I can tell you that. Right now, if you go to callbaba.com, you can make an account. You can sign up and be talking to Baba 30 seconds later, right? Probably one of the easiest onboardings you'll ever do. Save that contact in your phone, just like you would, your daughter, your neighbor, your doctor, so that it's super easy to dial up or send a text. I think you'll be shocked. And what I encourage you to do is get through the third call, because what we see is that in the beginning, we're getting really close to making a voice that sounds indistinguishable from a human. But for now, you can still tell. And in the beginning, Baba doesn't know you, you don't know Baba. And so it takes time to build rapport, just like it does with a normal human. So stick with it, because that's when you really start to see the benefits. But on our side, we're a team in New York, and we're really focused on figuring out what are those workflows that are so gnarly to caregivers that just make you want to throw your phone out the window, because in addition to caring for someone and potentially preemptively grieving them and dealing with your own job and your kids and whatever else is on your plate, now you have to figure out what this, website from the government looks like, and what the right codes are. Those are things that AI was built to solve. And that just gives you so much time back, and quality time. And I just remember dealing with this as well when I was, in the weeks after my grandmother's strokes. In the weeks after my grandmother's strokes, why do I keep saying that? In the weeks after my grandmother's stroke, only one stroke, we would sit around the dining room table with my grandfather and my aunt, my mom, and I, because we were kind of like the people that triaged everything. And we had to figure out what power of attorneys were. We had to figure out what health directives were. We had to figure out what her passwords were to things, right? All of these really painful things in a moment of grief, frankly. And that's too much of what caregiving is right now. It's so reactive.
Right. English only, or what?
I mean, I can barely speak English today, apparently, with the way I'm rambling. But yeah, no, Baba can speak in a bunch of different languages, so we encourage you to try that. We are still fine-tuning it because we want it to be completely seamless in every language. But we have folks that try to speak to it in Spanish, speak to it in Mandarin, and often it works.
Oh, very good. Well, it was funny because we talked about that offline. Some of the comments I've seen, what's a Baba? Okay, well, but hey, abuela, a nana, a mima if you're from Texas, anything. So that's awesome.
I didn't know that was a Texan thing. I have a teammate that he's an incredible designer from Headspace, that orange app.
Oh yeah.
So that's the DNA behind Baba. But he calls his grandmother Mima, and that she's always in all of our designs, our mock-ups. And so I guess that must be a Texan thing.
It's it's certain parts of Texas, I guess. But I'm sure my kids will have. I'll be a grandpa at some point, but I don't want to be the Mima or people. No, I think we'll avoid that. We'll come up with a cooler name. All right, you're doing good work. What else are you? It could be anything. It could be Baba. It could be any subject on earth. But what are you most excited about right now?
Well, it's definitely Baba. I think I get so motivated every single time I meet with a caregiver. I walk into a assisted living, a SNF, a skilled nursing facility, or just hear feedback from one of our actual users who might find us on the internet themselves, and how they use it. The creativity is insane. If people are doing reminiscence, whether people are asking about the weather, whether people are doing brain games. Someone was able to teach Baba how to play crossword puzzles over the phone.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, how do you come up with this? But it looked really fun, and we've actually expanded it so now other people can play that game on the phone as well. So that's what I drive a lot of my my energy from.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. The question I ask most people at the end is, if you had a time machine and you could go back and have coffee with your younger self 20 years earlier, what would you ask them about midlife? Well,
I might be on the playground.
Yeah, you'd be at recess or somewhere right now. So we have to reframe that. But I do want to change it up a little bit. And so if you have a time machine and you can go forward, and now you are having coffee with your 75-year-old self, right? So you've been able to help change caregiving, aging. What do you hope to see? What do you hope to see aging look like in the next few years?
No, I mean, that's a really powerful question. I think everyone should ask themselves that. What do they hope their 75-year-old self will tell them? For me, on a personal level, and then I'll talk about more the tech side. I really hope that I have been in a place to help my mom age. You know what I mean? Because I see that she lives alone right now, and as I'm building this, I frequently think, and she's still very able-bodied. She works. She's a firecracker in a lot of ways. But I'm like, I don't want this system to be what she inherits. So there's a clock. There's a clock ticking.
Got it.
On a 10-year time horizon to figure out what aging at home looks like in a way that is not just waiting for the ball to drop.
Mm-hmm.
What does aging look like? I think the thing I get really excited about is Neuralink. I think some of the brain-computer interface work is really going to be revolutionary. It's not ready yet. It doesn't solve the problems that are here today. And it's going to be priced in a different price range. It's not going to be this accessible solution that what we're building with Baba is. But I think when you see these videos of people walking again, hearing again for the first time, seeing again, which is inevitable, right, with the trajectory we're on, people are just not going to be as unhealthy. Which is just going to be remarkable.
It's good. Let's hope that happens.
And Bradley, if I could say one other thing too
Absolutely.
that I remembered I'm excited by, with these studies, I am so excited to see what the results are, what the actual, peer-reviewed results are, because everybody and their brother out there is saying, oh, I've made a chat bot for random insert demographic, and it's a lot of sloppy, I think, frankly, irresponsible, very money-seeking behavior. And you see companies that have just been tinkering with one AI, toy after one AI toy, and nothing really works, and they just keep pivoting, and then they're like, oh, wow, the caregivers are people under a lot of stress. Let's see how we can extract dollars from them. And I think that is just incredibly negligent and cuts all these corners. And and then you hear stories about ChatGPT having these claims from parents of a kid, who ended up committing suicide. And I think there's a lot of mental illness there that was going to exist regardless of what AI he talked to. But this is a vulnerable state of life for most people. And it needs to be done by serious people who have not only, built businesses before, because you can't have any impact unless you actually have a business that can grow. Right. You have a responsibility, if you want to help the people you're out to help, to make this a sustainable business. Which my team has done, right? The last company I was on the founding team of is doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. But you also have to have a team that isn't willing to cut corners. And I think that is why universities and academics that have spent their careers doing this, like at Hopkins, like at MIT, we have clinicians from Stanford that we work with as well, why they're taking us seriously and why they're investing their own time and giving us money and budget to run these studies with them. And I take that very seriously. This is a serious investment from serious people for a serious issue. And so that I am very excited to start seeing those results come out that match the results we're already seeing in smaller populations in nursing homes or with folks aging at home.
Excellent. I mean, it is a serious thing, and it requires serious attention, and you're doing it. You're helping changing things.
Appreciate it.
So we're going to make it possible in the comments and everything for you to be able to access Baba and learn more about that. And it's something, like you said, you're really changing it and changing lives.
Appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Thanks for having me, Bradley.